Om Shanti, good morning. Today is 9th of January, and this is Avyakt Murli, originally spoken on 21st December 1989. And the title is The Attainment of Blessings from Tridev Creator. Tridev means the three deities. So that means the subtle regions, Brahma, Vishnu, Shankar. So the first thing Shiv Baba does is to create the subtle regions, which is the region where he can communicate directly with your consciousness without going through the body. And this is done through visions. Because when you go through the body, you also have to go through language, culture, and so many contexts. But when you are working with the subtle regions, you're going directly to the soul independently of anything that ever happened in the cycle. So that's interesting. And because God doesn't function like a human soul, and he pushes us to his level so that we know what level to be on. And then, of course, we fall down again to normal human level, but he keeps pushing us, right? Today, Tridev Creator, the creator of the three deities, is seeing his corporeal and his subtle creation. So the corporeal creation is the Brahmins, who used to be deities and who are becoming deities again. That's the corporeal creation. And the subtle creation is the Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, Shankar, and these are regions. There was in the early pictures, the picture of the three worlds showed the material universe below, then three bands, a white, a yellow, and a red, and then the red area for the soul world. So Brahma Puri, Vishnu Puri, and Shankar Puri. And so in Brahma Puri is Brahma Baba and the ancestors and the angels, the actual angels, no angels down here. And then in Vishnu Puri, all the visions of the golden age and who is who. And in Shankar Puri, you can actually see the soul world. You can't see the soul world in the soul world. And in Shankar Puri, also destruction. And then also, I suppose in Brahma Puri, you would have Dharmaraj Puri. So Dharmaraj Puri is where you actually go after your final death, you go face to face with the supreme justice in the form of Brahma Baba, and for us Brahmins, we have the tribunal of the 8 jewels, and so that's something different. So all that is in the subtle regions. So both his creations are deeply loved, and this is why the Creator is pleased to see the creation. The creation also means his children. So the creation, us, constantly sings songs of happiness, that how wonderful the Creator is. And the Creator constantly sings the songs, how wonderful my creation is. And the creation has the full spectrum from the very best to the very worst. And all dramas associated with that. And he thinks it's wonderful do we think it's wonderful also? The creation is loved. And those who are loved, creation means us BKs, the creations are loved, and those who are loved are made complete by always giving them everything. So the Father has made each of his elevated creation complete with all three relationships in particular. So the most influential or the greatest influences on any person, their father, their teacher, and the Satguru. And so in the relationship of the Father, he has become the bestower, and he makes you full of the treasures of knowledge. So this is our inheritance, the knowledge. In the form of the teacher, he has become the bestower of fortune and makes you fortunate for many births. So the teacher teaches us how to use the knowledge to create fortune. And in the form of the Satguru, he has become the bestower of blessings and fills your aprons with blessings. So the Satguru defines us and gives us the identity different from the Father. Father gives the identity that you can receive the inheritance. And Satguru gives the identity of this is who you are. So now be it. So all the titles, these are given by the Satguru, and you have no option, no choice. You must be that, no ifs, ands, or buts. So it's a very forceful relationship, which requires absolute surrender. And so you're not surrendering in the sense of giving away your power like usually happens on the earth, but you're surrendering in the form of giving away your inability to take your power. Write it down. It's a very useful piece of information. So this is called imperishable love. The specialty of Baba's love is that he does not like to see any weakness in those whom he loves. So what is our weakness? There is something called fear of success, right? So that may be something to do with it. A weakness, usually BKs say your weakness is all your 5 vices and so on and so forth, and you better stay weak. But he doesn't like that because that's sort of Iron Age religious angle on things. But weakness is you don't come into the power that he's giving. So you stay pulled down by conditioning or disempowerment of one sort or another. So realize that he loves you, and the implication of him loving you is you come up to be what he sees you as. Yeah? So he would transform the weaknesses into a wonder. And this is also a psychological, very interesting aspect, that someone who is very badly damaged by life, brutalized by life, is handicapped by that brutalization. But when they work through it, that very same thing becomes the instrument to make them more powerful than anyone else, in particular the brutalizers. So that's good to know. The Father constantly has the powerful thought of transforming any weakness into a wonder. So this is transmutation. Do you know this word, transmutation? And there's also a word, transfiguration. Now, these are from Christianity, connected with this shift of Jesus Christ from the ordinary person into what they call the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit corresponds to what we call the Avyakt stage. And so to go from ordinary basic BK into Avyakt, fully empowered angel, this is transfiguration, transmutation. And transmutation, this word is also used for the alchemy of changing base metal into gold. And Baba is changing us from iron into gold through the confluence aged process, which is a transmutation and purification process. Because of love, the father cannot bear to see the children laboring. If there is any need for any type of labor, then do it. But in Brahman life, there is no need to labor because you have become so full from having all three relationships. With the bestower, the father, the bestower of fortune, the teacher, and the bestower of blessings, the Satguru. You can stay in that spiritual pleasure without laboring. You just rise up, right? Your consciousness, your sense of self, just rise up. Weightlessness. You can have the inheritance, the study, and also the blessings. What need is there for a soul who has all attainments in these three forms to labor? Sometimes remember the inheritance and the father in the form of the bestower, and you will have the intoxication of a spiritual right. I mean, you have the third eye. You are Swadarsan Chakradhari. You are the seers of the three aspects of time, masters of the three worlds. You are that. If you remember him in the form of the teacher, you will have the intoxication of the fortune of being godly students, that is, direct students of God. And the Satguru is making you move along with blessings at every step. The elevated directions, Shrimat, for every action you perform is the blessing of the bestower of blessings. And someone who takes every step according to Shrimat definitely receives the blessings of success for every action at every step, easily and automatically. This is known as the attainment of elevated salvation, that is Sadgati, by following the Shrimat of the Satguru. So Sadgati is your right destination. So you follow Shrimat from the Satguru and he puts you where you're supposed to be, right place. This enables you to claim liberation and liberation in life, Mukti and Jivan Mukti. You are free. Are you free? Make sure. Daddy Janki used to say, it's relatively easy to get free, but not so easy to stay free. And there's a philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, French philosopher, who said, a man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. So these are chains from society and chains from karmic accounts. So now Baba's breaking all those chains, social chains and karmic account chains. So you claim freedom, liberation, and liberation in life. Your instructions are elevated, Shrimat is elevated, and so the salvation, that is the consequences, is also elevated. You definitely claim your sweet home anyway. Go back to the soul world. This is liberation, and your sweet kingdom, which is salvation, Sadgati. However, Brahman souls receive an even more special salvation. You know, this word salvation is used in a very particular way by Brahma Baba to mean something extra that you may need, but you may not think you need, or it can be something that you think you need that other people don't need. So in BK language, salvation means that. And then Sadgati is something altogether different. So Brahman souls receive an even more elevated Sadgati, consequence of your actions, the right consequence. And that is the immediate fruit of the elevated actions performed at this time on the basis of Shrimat. So normally you do some good action, you get the good result in your next birth. Here you do something good, you get the result immediately. That is, they achieve success. It is only at the confluence age that you Brahmins attain this elevated Sadgati. So you get the consequences now. And this is why it is said, as you follow the Shrimat, so is the Sadgati that you receive, the consequences. Those people think they will receive Sadgati after death. And this is why they say your last thoughts lead you to your destination. Destination means Sadgati. So for you Brahmin souls, during this last birth of dying alive, you receive the fruit of success for every action, provided that you're fully dead. Are you dead? What is dead? Dead means you don't have any possessions. Because when people die, everybody takes all their stuff, right? And then you have a will or not, but it all goes to somebody else. So dead means you've already given up everything to God, including your body, your mind, your stuff, your kids, your parents, your everything like that. So when you're dead and you're with God, dead people go to God according to the beliefs. So you go to God, you get Shrimat, and you get, every time you are in the consciousness of being dead, your thought, whatever thought you have is your last thought, because you're dead. Dead people can't have thoughts. So if you are dead and having a thought, it's your last thought, right? So then you get the consequences of your last thought, time after time after time. This is a very interesting spiritual law. So for you Brahman souls, during this final birth of dying alive, every action, you receive the fruit of success for every action. That is, you receive the blessing of receiving salvation, Sadgati. You get the right consequence of what you want. Because freedom means to do what you want, when you want, how you want, if you want, and not if you don't want, and for as long as you want. That is freedom. Have you got that? At the present time, as in the future, you definitely experience constant, continuous freedom and Sadgati, liberation and salvation. You're free to do what you want because you have willpower, and you get the consequences of that thought because that's power. You do not wait in anticipation of receiving it in the future. This is the significance of the attainment of the confluence age. perform action now and claim the right of the attainment now. This is known as giving with one hand and receiving with the other. Your deal, you have made a deal with God, you have a contract. It's not made in the hope that you will receive something at some point in the future. Like there's an expression, pie in the sky when you die. Have you heard that? In Christianity, in the Western culture, there's this promise. You do this and then when you die, you will get everything. So just keep doing. So this is also the belief of the devotees. But so your deal is made with the idea that an instant donation is a great donation. So there's this saying that if you give something immediately, you get the idea of giving. That's a great donation, because sometimes people get that thought of giving, but then they don't actually give. And so there is a belief even within BKs that if you get the inspiration to make a donation, and do it right away, because if you don't, it won't happen. You change your mind. Because possessiveness, concern, or what if, I need the money, whatever. What you do is with the idea that the instant donation is the great donation. Such is your attainment. This is known as a very rapid deal. You make the bargain right then. In the path of bhakti, you waited in anticipation of receiving something in the future at some point. In the path of bhakti, you thought that you would receive it later at some time. Whereas here, the Father says, take it now. At the beginning of establishment, it was very well known that you received visions very quickly. So in bhakti, there's a belief that you have to do very intense meditation and practice for a long, long time before you get a vision, 50 years or something. But here, people would sit down and go in trance. So it is very well known that people used to get these visions. So from the beginning, there has been a very quick deal. This is known as the Creator's true love for the creation. So our relationship with God is quite different from religious people. No one else can give such love throughout the cycle. No matter how well loved a person may be, this is imperishable love and imperishable attainment. So no one else can be as much loved as this. So you are loved by God to this extent, so much, that it's impossible for you to doubt your worthiness. Is that right? He says he must be right. So the Father feels mercy for the children who labor. So children who labor is people who haven't understood this. So they're still functioning like devotees. Hard work, and you may get pie in the sky when you die sometime. Someone who has received blessings and a right to an inheritance never has to labor. The fortunate children who belong to the teacher, who is the bestower of fortune, always pass with honors. Neither do they fail, nor do they feel anything wasteful. So Baba's working on these words, fail and feel. And in BK, there are these, there's a different vocabulary for the rest of the world. And so when you feel something, it means something happens and it pushes you out of your stage of stability and you become emotional. And becoming emotional means you get angry or you get sad or you get somehow off your power and put into a weak state of mind. So this is called feeling in this language. And this is what Baba means by feeling something wasteful. So what is the meaning of wasteful? Wasteful means something which is actually trivial, not important. Something may happen, someone may say something to you which hits you or presses your button, and then it creates an emotional reaction. So that's not necessary because you have to catch it and realize that someone's trying to manipulate you and you have to catch it so that they don't succeed. But the game of manipulation is going on all the time. So you have to be sharp. There are two reasons for having to labor. You either fail when you come up against some obstacle of Maya, or in your connections and relationships with Brahman souls, or souls without this knowledge. So something happens to destabilize you. Either a BK will destabilize you, BKs are very, very clever in that, or your family members or your close relationships, very, very clever in destabilizing you. Or some thought from nowhere comes along and destabilizes you. So these are your games. So in both cases, while doing anything, you begin to feel waste. That means you get emotional and you start having thoughts, even over very trivial matters. And you people, that means Brahmins, call this flu. So in old days, in the 50s and 60s, they used to talk about feeling ka flu, the flu of feeling. And because in those days, the way BKs were trained to be BKs was very tough. Like when you're with a traditional guru, you know, they give you a very, very hard time with the aim of breaking your ego and getting you to obey and follow the instructions, because they want to make you the best of the best of the best, which means they have to break you and remodel you. This is the traditional system. And so people had a hard time with that, and they would get the flu of feeling. So Baba says, what happens when you get that kind of flu? Firstly, there is shaking and shivering. And there in that flu, your body shakes, but here the stage of the soul shakes and shivers. What's happening? And then the mind shakes. That means you get all sorts of feelings and thoughts. And then your mouth becomes bitter. You react with bitter words. You begin to speak bitter words through your lips. And what else happens when you get flu? Hot and cold flushes. Here too, when you have a bad feeling, you get angry and then you feel hot. Why did this one say this? Why did this one do this? So this is your internal anger. You have experienced this, haven't you? What else happens? You don't want to eat or drink. What happens here? Here too, when you're told a good point of knowledge, you don't like it. And what is the ultimate result? There is weakness. Here too, this weakness lasts for some time. When he says you're told a good point of knowledge, it means you're corrected. You see? So, and you don't like it when somebody corrects you because you have ego. If somebody corrects you and you don't have ego, you adjust. So therefore, neither fail nor feel bad about anything. Bhab-Dada gives you the most elevated instructions. So have the pure feeling that I am an elevated soul out of multi-millions. Do you feel that? Because on one side, Baba is putting you way up, and on the other hand, life has put you way down. And so you have to basically choose from these two messages. Are you going to follow what God is telling you or what life is telling you? It's your choice. But it's a difficult choice because you have all these pressures to put you down. Huge amount and quantity and for a long period of time. Then along comes God and says, what? Go to the top of the tree. So think like this. I am an elevated soul out of multi-millions. And you have to hold these two feelings at the same time. The feeling of being heavily put down by life and the feeling of being heavily put up by God. Because these two feelings will challenge your ego. So when somebody puts you up, the ego of I am something comes along. And when somebody puts you down, the inferiority. So when you have these two messages at the same time, one putting you into superiority and the other putting you into inferiority, and you have to be independent of both. That's the exercise that he's giving us with these sentences, you see. So he says, now have the pure feeling, I am an elevated soul out of multi-millions. I am a deity soul, a great soul, a Brahman soul. I am a soul with a special part. So those who have this feeling will not have the flu of any waste feeling. So neither will you be in your superiority nor the inferiority of ego, but you will be in pure self-respect, which is different from those two. So it's very subtle and very difficult, but do it anyway. So stay in this pure feeling where there cannot be any impure feelings. So when you're in that feeling, you're exactly natural. You're the real you. And that's a very, very good stage. That's what you want to be. That's real soul consciousness. So you will then be protected from the flu. That is, you will become free from having to labor. You will constantly experience yourself being sustained with blessings, that you are flying ahead with blessings, and you are receiving success in the service you do with blessings. All this is going on the inside. Externally, you're just you. And if you show either of these things, then there will be some price to pay. But if it's all going on the inside, and you're in complete equilibrium in the face of these ego challenges, and you're holding steady, and externally you're playing your part, whatever it's supposed to be, this is very good. Because there you have your privacy. And privacy is very important, right? You don't want anyone to go inside your mind and see what's going on there. That's called privacy. So you have your mask of, this is my part, I'm playing my regular BK part, whatever. And inside you have all this going on to get yourself stable. And then you get yourself stable and you fly. But nobody can see that, because if they could, they'll give you a hard time about it because it makes them jealous. So Baba's asking, do you like to labor? Or is it that the habit of laboring, that struggling, has become firm? Do you like to labor or struggle? Or is it better to stay in pleasure? Pleasure means not like ecstasy or something like this, but you feel very, very good just being who you are without having to prove anything to anyone. So some do not like to do anything other than the sort of work that requires labor. Right? You're in a context which says if you're not doing anything productive, you must be doing something wrong, right? That's the culture. So there are people who handle the stress of that mentality by being busy. So that gets people off their back. So if you would ask someone like this to sit down comfortably on a chair, he would get uncomfortable, right? He would say, no, give me some hard work to do because you're engaged in the work. So Baba wants us to be engaged in being rather than doing. Here, it is the labor of souls who have become tired from laboring, struggling spiritually for 63 births. You have been searching for 63 births, haven't you? It does require hard work to search for someone, doesn't it? So you were already tired. You have already labored for 63 births, and now stay in pleasure for this one birth at least. And what is the condition on most BKs? Sleep deprivation and heavy stress. Yes. Is that good? So, some shift is needed. So he's obviously noticing that BKs haven't quite understood the Gyan yet. Never mind. He says, stay in pleasure for this one birth at least. So the 21 births are a matter of the future, but this one birth is special. You can experience both having to labor and having pleasure. In the future, you will have forgotten all these things. The pleasure is here. Others are laboring and you are in pleasure. Does that make you feel guilty? Some people, they feel guilty if they're not busy working, just hanging around. Have you teachers performed bhakti? For how many births did you do that? You did not do it in this birth, did you? Your devotion, your bhakti finished in your last birth. When did you start bhakti? With whom did you start bhakti? You did bhakti along with Brahma Baba and the beginning of the Copper Age. Which temple did you do it in first? Presumably Somnath temple, right? So you are the original souls of the path of bhakti and also the original souls of the path of Gyan. And because the bhakti of the beginning was unadulterated, the happiness and bliss of devotion according to that time were no less. And that happiness and bliss were elevated in their own place. Now the question, are you part of the rosary of devotees, since you are the original devotees? Since you began the devotion, you should be part of the rosary of devotees, shouldn't you? Were the double foreigners part of the rosary of devotees? Did you become devotees, or were you in the rosary of bhagats? You are now wondering whether you were or not. Were you part of the rosary of victory? And also part of the rosary of bhagats? You became worshippers, but were you part of the rosary of bhagats? The rosary of devotees is separate. You become enlightened ones who then become devotees. Enlightened means jnani. You become jnani, then you become bhakta. And those are only bhakta, only devotees. So the people who become the rosary of devotees, the well-known devotees, Mira and Narad, right? They never become BKs. Fine points. There is a difference between the rosary of knowledgeable souls and the rosary of devotees. So the rosary of Jnani Atma, right, the knowledgeable souls, is the rosary of victory. It's called Vijayanti Mala. Have you heard that? It's a very famous singer who's called Vijayanti Mala. And also, you know, in the old pictures and the picture of the tree, there is a picture of the rosary with all the Shaktis inside it. Have you seen that picture? And so that's the 108, the rosary of victorious souls. So the rosary of knowledgeable souls is the rosary of victory, whereas the rosary of devotees is those who do intense devotion. Those who do not want to listen to anything other than devotion. And they consider devotion, bhakti, to be the most elevated. So the rosary of knowledgeable souls is separate from the rosary of devotees. You have certainly performed devotion, but you would not be said to be part of the rosary of devotees. And this is because after playing your roles in devotion, all of you came into knowledge. They are intense devotees, whereas you have intense knowledge. So that means you understand it very precisely and you get it. That this is true. And the devotees have conviction about devotion, which is not true, but they have very strong conviction. So there is a difference in the sanskaras of the two types of souls. A devotee soul is someone who always has the sanskaras of praying. And they ask, they pray, they say, I am degraded and the Father is elevated. They have these sanskaras, putting the self down at any and every opportunity. Make sure you don't do that. Life will make sure you do that. But God says, don't listen to life. Listen to me. Don't put yourself down. It means that you have to face off all of these messages of life which have been dogging you for centuries, and face them down, make them disappear. So they are royal beggars, whereas you souls have the sanskar of claiming a right. Therefore, as soon as you received the introduction of Baba, you started to claim your rights. You said, this knowledge is true. You switched and said, yes, this is it. The other is not it. Do you understand? Give some space to the devotees too. Will you be part of both? They have half a cycle, the devotees, Copper Age and Iron Age, and you have half a cycle. You have the Golden Age and Silver Age, and they have the Copper Age and Iron Age. They also have to be part of the rosary that is remembered, and they are still better than the people of the world outside. The people of the world outside means the like worldly people, because the devotees are not very worldly. So their intellects are not going in other directions. Other directions means sense pleasures. They are still focused on the Father, and they remain pure. They receive the fruit of their purity. So he's also looking at the people of the sannyasis. They're very strong devotees. So they receive the fruit of their purity, which is they get praised. So the very well-known, elevated gurus, these people. So they receive the fruit of their purity, which is of being praised. And you will be worshipped. They will not be worshipped. They will create statues and position those statues to praise them. But there is never a temple to Mira. Mira is never worshipped in the way the deities are. She is only praised. And people worship anyone during this last birth. They may worship the earth, they may worship the trees, but they will do it according to the disciplines of worship. Even if you're worshipping a tree, systematic. But the devotees are only praised, they are not worshipped. You are the souls who become worthy of worship. So constantly keep this intoxication in your awareness. A soul who is worthy of worship cannot even touch an impure thought. Have you become worthy of worship to this extent? Acha. To the souls from everywhere who have a right to the inheritance, to those who always pass with honors in their studies, to those who become bestowers of blessings through their own blessings and make others into bestowers of blessings, to those who are very much loved by the Father, Teacher, and the Satguru, to the elevated souls who constantly stay in spiritual pleasure, Bap Dada's love, remembrance, and namaste. Now Baba's meeting with the people from Punjab and Rajasthan. So he asks, do you constantly experience yourselves to be holy swan? So the holy swan, holy Paramahansa. You know this guru, Paramahansa Yogananda? Yes. So that's Paramahansa. You are Paramahansa. There's holy swans. So the holy swan means one who can distinguish between powerful and wasteful. Powerful means significant and wasteful means insignificant, trivial, meaningless. Those swans separate pebbles from jewels. They separate pearls from stones. But what do you holy swans discern? You discern between powerful and wasteful. So if you get a thought of self-doubt or whatever, that's called waste, trivial. It's not who you are. Powerful thought is who you are. You can discern between pure and impure. Just as swans never pick up stones, but they separate them and put them aside and do not take them. In the same way, you holy swans put waste thoughts aside and you adopt powerful thoughts. So waste thought will come up in your mind, because where does it come from? Your subconscious. All the time, bubbling up, percolating, coming up. And you say, have a nice day, go away. You're not relevant. And you choose a thought that Baba gives you over that thought. Even if that thought is very insistent, go away. Because you have power to decide what comes in your mind in the sense of what stays in your mind. So any thought can come, but what thought will you entertain? Anyone can come to your door, but if you don't want them to come in, you say, go away, get out. So if waste thoughts do come, you do not adopt them. If you adopt any waste, you take it on, entertain it, then you cannot be called holy swans. It is storks who adopt that. A stork, the stork is symbolic of the person who claims to be a very righteous soul and very religious and correct and proper. And he's standing on one leg, which means like a hatha yogi, but he's always looking to see if there's any fish that he can have. So that's a stork. You heard, spoke, and did a lot of waste things, but what was the result? You lost everything, didn't you? You lost your bodies. Look at the bodies of the deities and see the bodies that you have now and see the difference. There is so much difference. The older ones are better than the younger ones. That means to say the older ones she's physically stronger than the younger ones. So you lost your bodies, you lost the peace and happiness of your minds, and you also lost your wealth. How much wealth did you have? A lot. Where did all that limitless wealth go? You lost it doing wasteful things. Now are you now accumulating, or are you still losing? Holy swans are not those who lose, but those who accumulate. You will now receive good bodies for 21 births, and your minds will constantly be happy, and there wealth will be equal to the dust now. Tons of it. Now even dust has become valuable, but there you will play with jewels, and your buildings will be inlaid with jewels. So how much are you accumulating? That's your lighting system. You have diamonds in the wall and one flame, and it's reflected all over. That's how your lighting. Those who have accumulated are happy. If you haven't accumulated anything, then your heart shrinks. If you have accumulated, you have a big heart. Shrinks means you're not generous. Big heart means you're very generous. Your hearts have now become so big. So is your account of accumulation increasing at every step? Or do you accumulate only sometimes? Have you looked at your charts very clearly? At such a time, you do not sometimes let things go to waste, do you? You are now aware of the value of time, aren't you? 1 second of the confluence age is so great, it would be said that it was only 1 or 2 seconds that passed that you wasted. But Baba says even 1 second is so great. If you remembered this, you would not waste even a second. To waste a second means to waste a year. So 1 second of the confluence age is so important. So you are those who accumulate, not those who waste, because you're either gaining or losing. It's only now in the whole cycle that you can earn an income. So holy swans means those who do not waste anything, either in their dreams or their thoughts. Holy means those who chase away any impurity in a second with the power of purity. And that is not just for themselves, but for others too. Because you have to transform the whole world, don't you? You know how great the power of purity is, don't you? Purity is such a fire that it can burn all the garbage in the whole world in 1 second. Complete purity is such an elevated power. At the end, when everyone will have become complete, then all this rubbish will be burned with the fire of love in your elevated thoughts. It means you're totally focused on Baba. And you're not taking support from anyone or anywhere, and you're not bothered by anyone or any what. That's purity, right? So let your yoga be very intense. Intense means fast. At the end, service will not take place slowly. As soon as you think of something, it happens. This is called service at a fast speed. Now you are filling yourselves with power, and then you will use it. Similarly, it is shown in the memorials of the goddesses that they burnt the devils with their intense fire. You must have seen these comic books between Superman and Spider-Man and all these, how they destroy the enemies, this big fight between good and evil. So here it is. So who they burned were not devils, but devilish powers. So the power of the vices, any kind of evil power, you can burn it with your purity. So of which time is this a memorial? It is a memorial of the present time, isn't it? So become those with such intensity. And if you don't become that, then who will? So now become those with such intensity, such fire of purity, and burn the devilish sanskaras and devilish nature. Burn everything. You have already burned your own sanskaras, haven't you? Or are you still burning your own sanskaras? Acha. Those from Punjab have at least become fearless. You are not those who are afraid, are you? You are the volcanic ones. Are you a volcano? Anyone can argue with a volcano? Not really. If you're in the way of a flow of lava, you better get out of the way because it's not going to. So you are volcanic. So what is there to be afraid of? Jwalamukhi. Jwalamukhi is volcano, but it's also like fire face. So when your face is illuminated with the power of purity, then nothing anybody can do. You are already dead, so who do you have to be afraid of? What people are afraid of is getting killed, right? They're afraid of death. So you're already dead, so what's the problem? Rajasthan should never forget their right to the kingdom. you do not forget the kingdom and just remember the desert of Rajasthan, do you? Rajasthan means the place of kings. Otherwise, it's a place of desert. So always have the awareness of your new kingdom. All of you have to be fearless and volcanic, and those who burn away the tamoguni nature that is within the elements of matter and within the souls. This is a very big task. Only when you do it speedily will it get accomplished. As yet, not all the people, let alone the elements, have received the message. So increase your speed. Let there be a center in every street, because according to the circumstances, you will not be able to go from one street to the next. There'd be riots, right? Civil war, can't go out. You will not even be able to see one another. You can't meet. So let there be in every center, a center in every home, in every street. Acha. COVID is a very good practice for all this. Because here the enemy is some invisible virus which might be waiting outside your door to make you sick. But then it will be civil war. So there'll be people with guns and knives and whatever to take you out. The blessing, may you become equal to the same as Brahma Baba and give a vision of your most elevated stage through your behavior and your face. Although Brahma Baba was in an ordinary body, he was always experienced as being most elevated. You glimpsed the highest being through his ordinary form. So follow the Father in the same way. Although your actions may be ordinary, let your stage be great. Let there be the impression of an elevated life on your face. In worldly life, some children's behavior and their faces are like their fathers. Here, it is not a question of the face, but your behavior is the image. And let the Father be experienced through everything you do. Let your stage be the highest, like Brahma Baba's, and you will then be said to be equal to the Father. And the slogan is, those who are stable on an elevated seat of a constant, stable stage are true tapasvis. Tapasvi is a high-level yogi who is doing that striving, but when you have reached that level, you hold yourself steady in that and stay there. Om Shanti. Experience the stage of being merged in love. God's love is a blissful swing. Constantly swing in this joyous swing, remain merged in God's love, and no upheaval of any situation or of Maya will come to you. Merged in love. I'm reminded of that song. If you are with God, then what can any storm do to you? Because you're in a different dimension. And I had an interesting dream last night about being on 3 dimensions simultaneously. It was quite interesting in relation to this, that one dimension is yourself, one dimension is the people all around, and another dimension is destiny. And they're happening all together, but you are invisible to the people who are all around. Destiny is invisible to you, right? And you're just there by yourself in your own dimension. Interesting, huh? So now Baba gave us in this Murli, the dimension of being by yourself is the dimension of keeping your awareness of who you are, right? Which could be displaced by the dimension of the influence of disempowering messages from life. And you decide which of those you want to be in. And it depends on nothing else except your decision. Even if the life messages are really powerful in making you think a certain way and feel a certain way about yourself, it's still optional. When you don't have God, it's not an option. You just get taken out by those feelings and thoughts. But in this way, you have all the options you need. And he says, no, you are a great soul, selected soul among the millions. You are special, but not ego. So think very carefully about this difference between thinking very highly of yourself, which is ego, which means it's not true, and thinking very highly of yourself, which is Baba's blessing. And if Baba gives a blessing, it becomes true, but you have to cooperate with it. So his blessings are very powerful, provided you use it, provided you take it on. So he gives us a blessing that's fixed, that's guaranteed. But then you also have to do your part to nurture the blessing and make it grow. Otherwise, you will cause it to be killed. So do not kill your blessings. You know, sometimes people get confused when somebody appreciates them. You know, you're so used to being put down or disregarded or misunderstood or something like that, that when all of a sudden somebody sees you and recognizes you and acknowledges you, you think there's something wrong with them. Right? Because this is not normal. But it does happen. And when that happens, you have to switch from your usual stage of handling disempowering people who can't see you, and then just become, yeah, I am that, but without ego. What do you think? It's quite interesting, no? It's very interesting because the power of life in the Iron Age and karmic accounts and so on to disempower you is gigantic. You know, your circumstances. And some people think that they deserve the circumstances they're in, right? But it's optional. The circumstances that you are in are also a test to find out if you are independent of circumstances and that you do not identify yourself as the product of these circumstances. The circumstances are just circumstances and you just happen to be there, but it doesn't mean anything about you. And that's called self-respect or self-regard. Once you understand that these circumstances and these messages are nothing to do with you, then you can die. Because as long as you think it's what you deserve, or it's the result of your karma or whatever, or it's real, then you are alive to that. But once you realize that it's just a context which is nothing to do with you, then you can switch over to this other dimension where God is giving you messages, which are not at all the same as the messages you're getting from circumstances or life. And then you're dead from there, and you're alive to over here. Then you're free. This is Mukti and Jivan Mukti. It's very interesting. And the only thing involved is a decision to be this dimension or that dimension. And we've been given this willpower or this power to make that decision. He talked in the Murli about the holy swans, right? It's all about decision making. And all the time there is the plenty of pebbles and a few pearls. And the holy swan also is said to separate milk and water. And pebbles and stones are easier to distinguish, but milk and water, they're mixed together. So how are you going to separate it? You have to spin the milk, and then it separates into milk and water. It's called churning. Churning. So whatever comes in front of you, any scene or something, challenge or whatever it is entirely up to us to interpret it however we decide. It will present itself as something. And if you take it at face value, that's one option. But it also indicates that you're not remembering who you are. Because whatever comes in front of you is not what it seems. That's just a given. It's not what it seems. And so once you know whatever is in front of me, it's not what it seems, then you have to churn it to be able to see what it is, the reality of it. And then when you see it, you choose it. If you don't see it, it's more difficult to choose it. So when milk and water is mixed together, you can't see the one and the other because they're mixed. Or you churn it, it becomes very evident. Okay, this is the milk, what it becomes as butter, and the other is buttermilk. So why are you going to drink the buttermilk if you could have the butter? And that's a holy swan. So always remember, nothing is what it seems. And then you start to use your intellect filled with knowledge. Perception is in the mind. You perceive a situation in your mind through your sense organs. And it's registered in your mind as this is what the sensory information is. But then you have to send it to the intellect for processing, which is where you do your churning. And then the intellect will come back with an answer saying, okay, it seems to be this, but actually it's this. And so then when you make a decision is based on what it is as compared with what it seems, then that's called a wise decision. What do you think? Like that? So that means we always have to be busy interpreting what's going on. And we also have to be sharp and fast. Because whatever is going on is going to trigger your sanskaras. And triggering your sanskaras means how you used to before Gyan, and maybe even during Gyan, but definitely before Gyan, how you used to respond to stimuli. And your response is called sanskaras, and sanskaras is conditioning. Conditioning is how you were raised by your parents, by life, by your schooling, by all the messages that you got from life. This is called conditioning, and you respond to that conditioning using survival tactics. And these survival tactics are the sanskaras that Baba wants out. Because survival tactics are the same thing as character defects, but you have them because you have to survive. But now that you're in Gyan, you're in a different dimension, and you're not in survival because God thinks that you're wonderful, marvelous, and fantastic. And so he says, okay, I give you my inheritance, which is all the knowledge, the third eye, etc., etc. And now come to school so you learn how to use this material and then make a fortune. And don't listen to those guys. Those guys means all this conditioning and all these circumstances that put you in survival mode. And these survival tactics are also the same as ego defense mechanisms, and they're also the same as conditioning, and they're also the same as character defects. All the same, and all done in the name of goodness, except that it contaminates the soul, and nobody gets it except Shiv Baba, who sees, oh, look at what's happening to my children, I have to do something about it. And so he tells us these things, but we have to be able to understand what he's saying so that we can actually apply it and not take 100 years to figure it out. And once we get it, okay, got it, then shift. So this shift is in a way going from the body consciousness, so all your conditioning, your survival mechanism, your ego defense mechanism, all this is body consciousness. And soul consciousness is when you see it. You got it. And you're in that other dimension. And the things that trigger your old sanskaras can't get to you because you're in a different dimension. And that's called soul conscious dimension as opposed to body conscious dimension. And so remember that nothing is what it seems. And then go retroactively so that all the things that you did and ways that you experienced what happened is reinforcing those sanskaras. And so retroactively you can change the experiences that you had. And the way you do it, according to me, is you use the Excel program. You know Excel? You see Excel? It's like a counting up program. And Excel, you put all different numbers, plus, 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 if you're counting up your expenses or whatever you want. You put in different values. And at the bottom, you get a total. And, you know, you have this particular total. But if you change the things that you put in, then it immediately changes the total. So when you retroactively remember your memories with a different angle on them, then it makes a difference in the total. Which means that something which is totaling some sort of minus thing, that the whole total is some bad thing, that bad things happen, but you put in different values for what happened because you interpret it different, then from a minus it becomes a plus. So as Baba was mentioning in this Murli, he takes weaknesses and makes them into wonders, right? He said in the Murli, I don't want you to be in your weaknesses. So a weakness is when you interpret something according to your conditioning. And a wonder is where you transform that thing and you interpret it in some completely different way, which means it has a completely different impact on you and makes you feel something completely different about yourself. So one is you're in this disempowered condition where everything is minus, and the other is you go into plus because you transformed it, you transmuted it. This is a very important power of yoga, power of transformation. And so Baba gave us the material, especially in this Murli. Avyakt Murli is a well-churned material, but then you have to churn the well-churned material. And once you understood the mechanism of this inheritance, because it's a yantra. You know yantra? You have mantra, you know mantra. But you got to also have yantra, which is an instrument. So this knowledge is not like information only. It's an actual instrument, and you have to learn how to make it work. You know, there is a film which is called The Golden Compass. Have you seen that film? Oh, look at that film. It's a kind of science fiction film made by a very well-known science fiction writer, and it was originally, the book was called something else, but I forgot what. But anyway, the film is The Golden Compass. And if you look at that film, you will see a representation of how you can use this instrument to see what's going on, which is different from what it presents itself as. And in this film, all the characters in the film had souls, which were in the form of animals. And the bad guys would steal the souls of the good guys, as it were, or the victims, you can say. And so they had to get it back. That was the story, get your soul back. And it's a very good analogy for what's happening with us. We have to get our soul back. We have to get our power back, because if you give your soul away to somebody else or they steal it, they can control you and disempower you. And this is Maya. But Maya operates through this conditioning. And if you get your soul back and realize who you are and what you are, then those things can't do anything to you. And this Gyan is very much using that mechanism. So the Gyan is a very similar thing to this golden compass. And of course, the chief baddie in that film was one woman, and she wanted that compass. And this little girl had it, and she had to protect it from getting stolen. Okay, there is a question. Can you please explain the difference between Mukti and Jivan Mukti? So Mukti means the return to the soul world. It also means freedom from karma, so karmatit. And Jivan Mukti means that you are free. You are in life, but you are not in life operating under the impact of karma. And it also means the golden age, where you have neutral karma. So all these things, what I've just been talking about, is also how to have freedom in life. And Baba gives us that. This is our immediate fruit. And then Mukti is going to the soul world. So we have both. And most of the devotees, they want Mukti, so they will get Mukti. And there's another question: how to develop our discerning discrimination power and coordinate the mind's and intellect power. we are in Holy Swan consciousness when nothing is what it seems. Yes, I think the only way that we can develop it is practicing it. We study, we think, we apply it. We find ourselves in all sorts of funny situations all day long. And we have to remember that we got the equipment, the material, the tools that we need to deal with it. And then we have to practice dealing with it. And that's going on in our interaction with people. It's going on in our minds. It's going on in our deep mind as well. There's a kind of deep mind. And I think it's useful for us to be studying these things, because in the morning time when we're studying, we have everything clearly in our mind, and then you go and have breakfast and get on with the day, and it all vanishes, right? But you have to keep it there, because then you can apply it and then make it into a sanskar, which displaces the other sanskar of all that conditioning. So that's a unending piece of work every day. And another comment, our safety from body conscious ego lies in staying in soul conscious dimension. Yes, I think so, yes. And that is what I feel soul consciousness is, and being in the awareness of the confluence age is that. Sometimes Baba talks about surrendering. You have to surrender to death, surrender to pain. It's in surrendering that you conquer. Because when you resist death and pain, it has you. But when you surrender, it has nothing to grab hold of. So you're the winner. And Dadi Prakash Mani used to talk about this. He used to say that harmony is accomplished by accepting defeat. Harmony. She would say har means defeat, and mani means you accept defeat. Because once you've accepted defeat, nobody can do anything to you. And because you're already dead, what's the problem? Baba said you're dead while alive. And so you have all these capacities that people who are alive don't have, because they're limited by their, attachments. Like, say, for example, you're in a war and you got captured. And what do? They'll torture you. Or they will say that they will take out your mother, father, brother, child, whatever. This is how the world works right now. But if you're already dead and you don't have anyone who can do anything to you, they can't threaten you because there's nothing, you see. And you're already dead, or you tell them, okay, you kill me, or I'll come and haunt you, so watch it. So it's like, even all the things are against you, but you're in your power because Baba has given us the tools to be invincible, internally and externally, because we don't have anything, we don't want anything, we're already dead. People can't deal with that. They're not used to that kind of people, right? So they can't really give you an insult because you really don't care. And they can't threaten you because you don't care. You're already dead. So they don't know what to do to break you. But to get to that point, we have to go through all of this drama that we have to go through in the confluence age so that we get it and don't forget it and hold it. And then I think there can be what Baba calls this fast speed service. Because I think that once a human being is settled in that consciousness and stable in it, then you're superhuman. and then you can be an instrument. He can work through you. He can do what he wants, you know. Because right now, he's got these about to become, slowly becoming Brahmins who keep on reverting to being ordinary humans and who keep on having waste thoughts, doubts, this and that. But he's infinitely patient. He says, even if it takes me 100 years or 1,000 years, I'll do it. And it works every time, because every 5,000 years is identical repetition. I mean, he knows the whole thing, beginning, middle, and end. So he has to be patient. There's one statement: if I give in to vices, is this the same as accepting defeat? Well, this is an interesting question, because what does it mean to give in to vices? So regarding this question, as you remember, Dadi Janki often said, and it's not from her, it's a well-known thing, that Maya comes in the form of attraction or terror. So giving into vices means you get attracted by attraction or terrified by terror. Accepting defeat is, I think, to do with two things. One is, don't pretend. Be absolutely real. Don't pretend. Because when you pretend, you're trying to, what you can say, fake it till you make it, which doesn't always work. What is a vice? Greed, anger, lust, attachment, ego. So he says, this is not real. It's that you are giving up being who you are. The thing that you have to admit defeat about is that you cannot control the situation, you cannot change the situation, and you cannot stop it. You know this expression. You can't stop it, you can't control it, you can't change it. It's a drama, fixed. So you have to accept it. But it doesn't mean that you have to come under its influence. It doesn't mean that you have to perform a negative karma in the name of admitting defeat. That's to interpret the gyan in such a way as to destroy yourself, which is not very sensible. So we have to not use faulty logic. It's very, very easy to take a piece of gyan and then say, da, 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 it means da, 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 therefore I will destroy myself and make somebody else to blame because they told me the piece of knowledge which I interpreted in that way. So no, we can't do it like that. That's not going to enable us to achieve victory. So the vices, you have to really understand the difference between your self-respect and your ego, superiority, inferiority, and move off of that dimension of superiority, inferiority into who you really are. And that involves surrendering to the fact that you can't change it, control it, or stop it. Because this is what keeps people locked into their karmic circumstances, trying to change it, trying to resist it, trying to do this, that, and the other, which you just have to let it go, let it be, and get on with being who you are. I think it's a better way to go. Your decision to be in your power comes when you understand the game and you understand how people manipulate you or try to make you give away your power or whatever. Om Shanti.